Hey everyone, Matt Brunig here. I just got screwed over in a big way by the U.S. welfare state, if you can even call it that, to the tune of over $2,000. So I'm pretty pissed at the moment, and I figured, hey, what better time to shoot a video than when you're at the peak of your anger, right? That's what they always say. Act in anger. Act in anger. That's what I'm going to do right here. So what just happened to me? Let's take a step back. In the U.S. system, we have these benefits called flexible spending accounts, FSAs. There's actually 3 versions of them. Itself a kind of convoluted mess, but the basic idea here is that if your employer is so deigns to do this, you can have these accounts where instead of them paying you money, in your paycheck, and then, taxes are removed, and then you get some net amount, and then that money goes into your bank account, and then you use that money in your bank account to pay for things like healthcare related expenses, aspirin, whatever, or childcare or whatever. Instead of the system working like that, instead they create this separate account called a flexible spending account, and the money, and you can elect to have some of your money put into that account, and if you elect to have some of your money put into that account, then when they put the money in that account, it doesn't get taxed, right? And then you can use that account. It's like now it becomes like a voucher, like a fucking food stamp, essentially, a constrained parallel currency that can only be spent on items that are like approved for that particular flexible spending account. Okay, already kind of convoluted, kind of confusing, kind of weird. But what they do to make it even better than that is they gamify it. So you have a year to spend the money. So at the beginning of the year, which is not necessarily the calendar year, I just learned this at the beginning of the plan year, you have to make an election into one of these accounts. So you have to do it every single year. So you have to say, every paycheck, go ahead and put $100 into my healthcare FSA, and then put another, $200 into my dependent care FSA. And when you make that election, then they do that for the rest of the year. Every time money, you get paid, they put money into that a little account. Okay. And then you got to make claims on that money. You don't get to just go and spend it necessarily. You have to make claims upon it, right? So for the dependent care FSA, you have to get the invoice from your daycare center and then send it up to some entity that administers the account, which is always some third-party bank or whatever, and then they will send you a refund for that. Okay, but you got to do it within the year. There's a little so most plans will run from January 1st to December 31st. That's like the nice calendar year. And then you got a couple of months after the end of the year. And you got to, you can make claims. The expenses have to occur within the calendar year, but you got a couple of months at the end of the year to turn in all your paperwork and get all your money reimbursed. If you don't do that, they take the money from you. You never get it back. It goes right back to the employer. And that has happened to me. I just learned of this, like I said. So let's go through some of these accounts because they're funny in their own right. So this is from the FSA Feds website. This is for actual federal employees. It's the only employer, I think, that has all the FSAs. They've got all the benefits. Anyways, the healthcare FSA is a pre-tax benefit account that's used to pay for eligible medical, dental, and vision care expenses, those not covered by your health plan or elsewhere. So you might think, don't employers provide insurance? Don't they take money out of your paycheck and then they pay that to an insurance company, and then that's like your premium, and then the insurance company will cover your medical expenses? You might think, that's a little convoluted, but that's kind of simple enough. No. So you pay the premium to your health insurer. By the way, my premium this year just got on the tax form, $22,000 total. You pay the premium to the health insurer. They then do not cover all of your expenses. They only cover like a portion of your expenses. The rest of the expenses you have to cover through cost sharing, through out-of-pocket expenses, through deductibles, co-insurance, co-payments, and then there's an out-of-pocket maximum. And all that's got to be done through your own cash, right? But if you use the healthcare FSA, instead of spending the money from your bank account, money that would have been taxed as you received it as income, do you spend money through this parallel account called the healthcare FSA. And so anything that health insurance kind of really should cover but doesn't and forces you to pay out of pocket even though you're already paying $22,000 a year in premiums, even anything that's remaining there that you're paying out of pocket, you can pay with the healthcare FSA, right? And what's the benefit of this? As they say, this saves an average of 30% on eligible healthcare expenses. They just mean you don't have to pay tax on it, including the payroll tax, I believe. So not just the federal income tax, but also the federal payroll tax and maybe some state taxes. I don't even know the full extent of it, right? But you get to save those taxes on it. And it goes into this sort of parallel account, okay? Here are all the things you can do. You can do the co-pays and the co-insurance. You can buy insulin. That's great, yeah. I'm gonna give my money into my healthcare FSA, and then I'll buy insulin with it. Prescription drugs. You can go to a chiropractor with it. Why not? Why the fuck not? You can buy all sorts of OTC stuff. You can buy bandages. You can use the healthcare FSA to buy some Band-Aids if you want, some pregnancy test kits. Why not? Other examples. I'm not going to click through it, but other examples. Why not? How do you manage it? Okay, they've got this other shit. Okay, so there's your healthcare FSA. That's the most common one. That's the one people really know about. But let's start getting into some niche shit. So you might think, healthcare FSA, that'll be for the healthcare. That'll be for healthcare expenses. Surely we don't need a second healthcare FSA. Oh, no, we do. The limited expense healthcare FSA. Why not? Why not? Why not have a healthcare FSA? And a limited expense healthcare FSA if it's not complicated enough already. Okay, so what is the limited expense healthcare FSA? This shit I wasn't even fully aware of. Apparently, they had to create this because we have this other system called health savings accounts. Oh, Matt, you mean this? You mean healthcare FSAs? No. A whole other thing called health savings accounts, okay? But does it kind of work like the healthcare FSA in the sense that you contribute to the health savings accounts, the HSAs, that you contribute to them with pre-tax dollars and you get those Yeah, it does kind of work like that, but it's different also. Okay, so because we have this other system, the HSAs, not just the FSAs, then you run into a problem where, okay, in order to get an HSA and actually get a tax benefit from an HSA, you also have to have a high deductible health plan, an HDHP, right? But the high deductible health plans don't cover all of the things that you can pay for with a healthcare FSA, right? Or all the things you could pay for with an HSA, because specifically things like dental and vision are often not covered by health insurance plans. So when it comes to the universe of things that are covered by health insurance specifically, even though you have to pay for them out of pocket through deductibles, co-insurance, or co-management, if they're in the universe of items that a healthcare plan includes, then you have to use either the coverage you get from your HDHP, or you have to pay from the HSA, or you have to pay just out of your bank account. But if it's in this other coverage universe that is not covered by health insurance, such as vision and dental, which for whatever reason we decide is just a whole other thing, then if you want to pay for the stuff, for the vision and dental stuff, you can use a limited expense healthcare FSA. So you can only get the limited expense healthcare FSA if you have an HSA and an HDHP, and then the limited expense healthcare FSA you can now use to pay for dental and vision because the HDHP and the HSA don't cover that. How many people must be using this? And who is using it correctly? And we got this last one here. This is the one that killed me. Okay, we got the dependent care FSA. This is for child care. We don't have child care benefits in the U.S., right? Well, sort of, kind of, not really. I don't know. Okay, so the way this works, it's actually like the healthcare FSA, right? Instead of just getting paid money and then you get money in your bank account and then you pay the daycare, they create a parallel account. They put the money in there, and then once the money's in there, you can use that to pay for child care. Except you can't just use it like I don't know, just like up front. You have to get invoices from the daycare and then turn that into the HSA people. It's the same kind of idea, but it's only for dependent care flexible savings accounts. Same kind of thing. It's just a tax game, right? If you don't spend it, you lose it. All right. What is the max? They don't even give you the maximum amount here. I think it's like 6,000 or no, here's over here, right? 5,000 per year. Okay, so you can put 5,000 per year here. Average cost of daycare is like 10, 15,000, whatever. We'll allow you to put a third of like the average cost of daycare into an FSA in order that you can save 30% of that, right? Because the 5,000, it's not free money. It's deducted from your bank account or from your paycheck. So you only save the amount of tax that you save. So if you put the maximum amount in here, it would be 30% of 5,000. 30% of 5,000, right? Which is 1,500. That's their average amount. Of course, if you're rich and you have a very high tax rate, you would save, maybe even more than that. If you're poor and you have a low tax rate, and it doesn't even fucking matter. You don't save really anything from putting money in the dependent care FSA. So that's another great, charming benefit of this. Now, how does this work in practice? So obviously, every single employer in the country is not going to be able to stand up and administer these kinds of accounts. So naturally, of course, we have a whole other, this is just another way for the financial system, for banks and stuff to run these kinds of accounts. They generate fees from them, and oh, what a lovely day. Now, you might be asking yourself, hey, Matt, wouldn't it just make more sense for the government to just like pay for this stuff? Or maybe at the bare minimum, why can't you just claim your child care expenses on your taxes as a deduction? Right? The same way that you claim other things as deductions. Why can't you just claim some of your out-of-pocket healthcare expenses as deductions, right? Wouldn't that work? And I guess the rationale here is that they want you to have the money like ahead of time. They want you to have the money before like tax time comes. And I'm like sympathetic to that, but holy God, this is not the way to do it. Okay, so after you have made a guess about how much money you're going to spend out of pocket on healthcare during the year, and made a guess about how much money you're going to spend on childcare during the year. At least that one's a little bit less of a guess. You have a little bit more of a sense of what it's going to cost. Healthcare, you have no fucking idea because you don't know how sick you're going to be during the year. Whatever. After you've made this guess and you've put the money into the FSA, I think I mentioned this already, you got 12 months to spend it, and if you don't, you lose it. So you're basically gambling. You're gambling on two things. You're gambling that your actual dependent care expenses and your actual health care expenses, or in this case, your dental and vision expenses, that those, the actual out-of-pocket expenses you have for those items will be equal to or greater than the amount that you're putting into the FSA, right? Because if they turn out to be less than the amount that you put in the FSA, you just lose it. They take the money out of your paycheck, put it into this account, and then since you didn't actually spend that much during the year, they don't give it the balance back to you. The employer just takes it and just keeps it. That's the situation we're in, okay? And so how many people, this is what happened to me. I didn't make the claim in time. Now, in my case, it was a little bit weird. Because the account in question, I just assumed that the way these worked, because everyone I'd ever seen in my life, the way it worked is it works on a calendar year, right? So you enroll in the plan sort of like on, I don't know, in November of 1 year, and then the plan starts January 1st and through December 31st, right? Nice calendar year. That makes sense. Taxes are done on a calendar year. This is basically a tax dodge, so that makes sense to me. And then of course at the end of the year on December 31st comes, you got a couple of months you can go make all your claims and do whatever, right? The other thing I should say with the dependent care FSA is if you put like a few hundred in each paycheck, it's not like you can just get it on a regular basis. You have to wait until enough money is accumulated in the account such that it is equal to or greater than one of your daycare bills, right? So if your daycare bill is like $1,700 and you're only putting like, $400 a month in the thing, right? Which would get you close to the 5,000 max. Well, now you got to wait, 3.5 months before you even get enough in your account to pay for one daycare bill. And you can't, or at least you ought not, like claim partial amounts of daycare bills. That's a whole other mess, okay? So you're going to probably wind up with some weird amount of money at the end of the year anyway, and then you're going to have to put one daycare bill and say, I only want you to cover part of that in order to clear out the account. Okay, fine. In my case, the plan did not start on January 1st and end on December 31st. Instead, it started on June 1st and ended on June 1st or whatever, right? May 31st, right? So it went from June to June. Instead of going from, January to January, it went from June to June. And so then your 2-month grace period only runs until August. And so if you forget to claim all of your benefits by the time August rolls around, which is not a natural month for doing this, any amount that's left in your account, employer just snags it and you forfeit it and you lose it. Now, I didn't lose all of it. I lost $2,000 worth of it. I didn't lose all of it. And I guess if you count the I don't know. I didn't lose all of it because I was making claims during the year, but I lost that amount at the end. And apparently I'm not alone. I started seeing this, and of course, immediately my mind goes, how many other fucking people are dealing with this? So let's look at this here. This is from the Employee Benefits, the Employee Benefit Research Institute. This is a legit org. They put out some of the most wonky, we're trying to figure out how all this shit works stuff in the game. They put together a database to try to figure out how many people are actually forfeiting this stuff at the end of the year. They're only doing healthcare FSAs. They're not doing the dependent care FSAs here, okay? But here's what they find. The percentage of workers forfeiting part or all of their contributions averaged 37% for all workers with a grace period provision FSA, 48% with a traditional use it or lose it FSA, and 49% for those with a rollover provision. So almost half, like a third to half of people, they take money out of their paycheck, they put it into this special account. They're only doing healthcare FSAs on the expectation that they'll be able to get it back tax-free in order to pay for some of their out-of-pocket, and then they just forfeit the money. And then the employer gets to keep it. The employer gets to keep it. What does this amount to in aggregate? They don't give an aggregate estimate here, but I found this article from money.com where they use this data, and then they use other data that they have to come up with a decent aggregate estimate here, right? So workers lose $3 billion a year in FSA contributions. Again, this is only healthcare FSAs as far as I can tell. It's not dependent care FSAs, okay? So what do they do here, okay? So this is from the EBRI data that they're using, right? According to new data, 44% of workers with FSAs in 2019 forfeited money. So that's the exact same thing we saw here, right? It's 44% because they're doing 37, 38, and 49. It's the weighted average of those three, right? So 44% of workers forfeited money for an average amount lost of $339 per person. All right, and we'll stick with 2019 because that's a non-COVID year. Meanwhile, Americans had 20.2 million FSAs in 2019. With reliable data on how often workers forfeit, how much they forfeit, and how many FSAs workers hold, we can now reasonably estimate that workers forfeited approximately $3 billion in 2019, and then in the COVID year, they say it jumped to $4.2 billion, though they say that's a little bit less certain, okay? $3 billion a year. Now, I don't know, compared to what? Compared to GDP? You can make what you want of this, but it is crazy to imagine this world where we have tried to, in theory, use government subsidies to make healthcare and childcare more affordable. But in fact, the way it works is people try to do that. They try to put money in these special accounts in order to get a tax subsidy that'll make these things more affordable. And then $3 billion of the dollars that they put in those accounts just get kicked right back to the employer as a charitable donation to the boss. That's the situation we're in. And I'm not saying, I don't think employers are even being malicious in this. This is the system that's set up. And when employers set up these benefits, they're probably and mostly trying to do a solid to their workers, trying to help them avoid taxes, I get all, but this is the end result, is that the money goes back to the employer. $3 billion each year. And what do they have to do with it? I thought, maybe they make them do something, special with it. No. What happens to unused FSA money? If employers are feeling generous, they can pull all the forfeited money together, divide it up by the number of workers who contributed to their FSA, and then distribute it equally. Or they could put the money towards next year's benefits, or they could do blah, 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 blah. But do they have to? Spiegel, their expert, says these options aren't very common. A more likely scenario, it's just a foregone expense. In other words, workers can kiss their forfeited contributions goodbye. Companies that offer FSAs are allowed to pocket the forfeited money. $3 billion a year. $3 billion a year. I also like to think about just the insanity. Sometimes it's useful to remember just how fucking insane the system is and just how much bullshit is built into it, right? Think about how many people have to be involved in the construction of this system. There's over 20 million of these accounts, right? And these accounts are run by financial institutions. So we're, billions of dollars in fees, no doubt. I don't know, hundreds of millions of dollars of fees probably are being extracted by these financial institutions who hold these accounts. And this is just for FSAs. This is not including the HSAs. Or hell, if we want to go to other account-based systems, what about the 529s for college education? What about the 401ks, the IRAs? All of these like personal account-based systems where the subsidy is a tax break and all this shit, it's all administered by these financial institutions that take these fees, right? On the flip side, you've got the HR professionals who have to set all this shit up. They're getting paid. You got a whole army of HR people. And then you got the tax preparers who have to deal with all this shit on the back end, and what's great and what makes America such a great and rich country is, without a doubt, all of that money that the financial institutions are raking in from the fees on these accounts, all of the money that's being used to pay the paychecks of the HR people who have to set this shit up and onboard everyone, all the money that's being paid to the tax preparers as far as their fees goes, all that it gets counted towards GDP. It gets counted towards GDP. So remember that. Remember that next time you want to compare like a U.S. system to another system, and they go, oh, wow, U.S. GDP per capita, man. What is the GDP per capita going to? What are these factor payments going to? Just waste, just the most inefficient fucking mess of this employer base / financial institution base / personal account base / tax subsidy base, which requires complicated tax prep. All of that is just this massive sprawling bureaucracy of people doing shit that doesn't need to be done. You don't need people managing this complicated scheme. How hard would it be? We know it's not hard because other countries do it. You want to make childcare more affordable, right? Obviously, in the most extreme end, the one I like is just have the government set up public daycares everywhere, just like they set up public K through 12. That's a pretty efficient system, right? And then you don't have to have these personal accounts and these flexible savings accounts, and it's this gamified use it or lose it. Hopefully you make sure to file your claims on time or money goes back to the employee. You don't have any of that shit, right? Or if you don't want to go that far, you can just have the government pay the bills, right? So in some systems, like in Norway, for example, they still have half of their quote unquote kindergartens, which are like childcare centers. Half of them are privately run and half of them are government run. And the ones that are privately run, no problem. The government covers like 90% of their costs. They just go to the government and the government gives them the money. And then the fees that the parents pay are just tiny little fees. There you go. We don't need any of this. We don't need 20 million separate accounts, all drawing fees. We don't need a tax form. We don't need all that. Just go subsidize the daycare center directly and no one has to deal with any of this shit. And on the plus side, no one winds up losing money on it. I tried to put money in this to make daycare more affordable, and instead I just got fucked on it. Because if I hadn't set up the account, the money would have just flowed to me in my paycheck. Instead, it went into the account and then went back to the employer. On healthcare, oh God, I mean, how hard is this, right? You want, public insurance. It's not that hard. Public insurance, guys. And what's also funny about this, and I mentioned this before, it's like the tax break, it's only beneficial if you have a certain amount of money, right? So it's like we're going to provide a tax subsidy for out-of-pocket expenses, right? But if you have a low tax rate, then that doesn't do anything for you. But also, here's the other thing. These healthcare FSAs are used to cover out-of-pocket expenses. They're used to cover things that the insurance itself doesn't cover. The only point of having the out-of-pocket expenses, the point of having out-of-pocket expenses at all, having cost sharing at all, is it's supposed to disincentivize utilization, right? We put a little skin in the game on the user because we think if we put skin in the game on the user, if we make them pay, a $10 copay when they go to the pediatrician, if we make them pay, 15% of the cost of their drugs or whatever, if we make them kick in every time they use, that will stop, wasteful utilization. Right? So we do that. We create a system where the insurers are only covering a fraction, whether it's public or private. Let's even put aside that shit for the moment, okay? Okay, let's say you want to do a private insurance system. Okay, a highly regulated private insurance system. You got them all set up. Okay, fine. So we set up the system where we have the private insurers running all this, especially the employer-based insurance, and then we say, okay, we only want you to cover a certain fraction of the cost, and then you can dump the rest onto users as cost sharing, and then that will help us keep down wasteful utilization, because they'll have skin in the game. Oh, but also after we've done that, we're going to subsidize their cost sharing. We're going to make it so that their cost sharing actually costs 30% less than that. If you want to make people spend less on their cost sharing amounts, just make the insurance itself cover more of the expenses, right? They call this actuarial value, right? So the actuarial value of a particular healthcare plan is what percent of the costs of their users do they cover. So like if a healthcare plan has an 85% actuarial value, what that means is that the premiums are going to cover about 85% of the costs, the healthcare costs of the enrollees. The other 15% will have to be paid by the enrollees themselves through out-of-pocket expenses, right? Okay, fine. Right? So let's say you think about just turning the dial on the actuarial value, right? Do we want it to be 80%? And then, I don't know, that's a lot of skin in the game, and that might cause people to not go to the doctor when they should. Okay, well, let's turn it up to 85%. Okay, maybe go to 90% or 95%. Oh, 95% is a little bit too much because now they only have like 5% skin in the game. And that's not going to be enough to disincentivize the right amount, to disincentivize wasteful utilization. Whatever, right? You're turning the actuarial value dial. What doesn't make sense is saying, I'm going to have the actuarial dial be at like 80 or 85, let's say. And then for that remaining 15%, I'm also just going to cover that through this tax subsidy, through this FSA. So it's actually, it scans as an 85% actuarial value plan, but if everyone actually used the FSA perfectly, it would actually fall down to it would actually go up to a 90% actuarial value plan because the government is kicking in the other 30% on average through this tax break through the FSA. So they're undermining they're undermining the design itself. The whole point of the cost sharing, they're undermining it by now subsidizing, but of course they only selectively subsidize, and the amount of the cost sharing that you get subsidized personally depends upon your income and your tax rate. And if you fuck it up and you put too much money in the account or you forget to claim it, maybe, you make a mistake there, then you lose all of it. So now we're gambling on that. Gamble on how much you're going to spend out of pocket and gamble on whether you're going to fill the forms out on time. And if you do all that right, then we'll cover 30% of your out-of-pocket expenses, which undercuts the whole point of having out-of-pocket expenses in the first place. It doesn't have to be this difficult. Why? I mean, I'm usually capable, as much as I hate the system, I know it well enough that I'm very good at navigating it for the most part. I've got like 10 different personal accounts all set up. When I had PPP actually has a 401k account that I administer personally. I go pretty full blown with this stuff and doing like fringe shit that other people don't even do because I just know it so well. And then even I got fucked by it. Even I couldn't play a perfect game. And of course, it's not just me. It's 37%, 48%, 40. So, if I can't play the game perfectly, who can play it perfectly? Who's supposed to be able to navigate all this? No one. So what are we doing? It makes me sympathetic. It makes me sympathetic for the first time in my life. Not for the first time, but let's say a conservative came to me, okay? And I was like, hey man, we need to beef up that welfare state, right? We got lots of holes in our welfare state. We should really beef that up. And I got some plans to beef that up, okay? And the conservative said to me, they go, instead of being like, oh, that's stealing, some Randian bullshit about makers and takers and whatever, or oh, that's violent theft. That's the gun that violates the non-aggression, or some stupid shit like they usually say. If instead they came to me and they go, "Hey Matt, I hear you. A well-designed welfare benefit that would help kids and help parents, help the disabled, help people who are sick. I'm all for you. I'm all for that. That sounds great. But here's the thing: if you elect the people who say they want to work on that issue, they're going to put in place a benefit that fucking sucks. It's going to be garbage. It's going to be extremely complicated. People are going to waste a lot of money trying to administer it. And hell, in this case, you lose. You're actually worse off. You can be worse off by playing the FSA game because it's a gamble. It's a for sure gamble. Look at these people losing all this money. So they're going to put this program in place. It's probably going to suck. People might lose money. It's going to be a massive headache. I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to navigate it, so I don't want it. I don't even want to deal with it. And what do I say? What would you say to them? I mean, look at Build Back Better. Look at the childcare provisions in that, or the pre-K provisions in that even, or the paid leave plan in that. All that shit sucked. It was all awful. So what would you say to someone if that was their objection? I would have nothing. I'd be like, well, I don't know. Maybe it'll be different this time. I mean, what do I say? It makes a completely valid point, which is that the actual people who might actually do something about the welfare state, which is the Democrats, they can't help themselves but do this kind of garbage. And in saying this, I actually don't know exactly where these came from, so maybe this was a Republican thing, but it's true of the shit they put together too. It smacks of the Democratic Party. It just, you see it and you go, that's Democratic Party to me. And so I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a valid political orientation to have. That's in a kind of practical politics, when I'm always sitting here being like, here's how you would make a perfect, clean, efficient welfare state. And I just lay it all out. And then you have these people being like, man, why don't you focus on something that could really pass? In my mind, I'm like, because all that shit sucks. But maybe I should say, well, hey, if you want to constrain yourself to the universe of things that can quote unquote actually pass, then hell, maybe there's a case for just being like, I just don't want to fuck with any of this then. In the universe of things that can actually pass, maybe you just don't want them to pass. I would be $2,000 richer, personally, if that shit just didn't pass and I didn't get screwed with stranded money in my dependent care FSA. And who knows what other people are losing. I mean, look at the 401ks and the IRAs, the fees on that stuff. That stuff has been a scandal for a long time now. People are trying to save money in their retirement accounts, these individual retirement accounts, and are being charged these exorbitant management fees, just sucking away their retirement savings. Do you want that? If that's what's on offer? I don't know that I do. I don't know that it's better than nothing, At least, if we could create some hard line that's like, look, it's either got to be nothing or it's got to be good stuff. It's either got to be nothing or it's got to be the stuff that Matt wants, the kind of stuff that you can go find in a Nordic nation. If it's not one of those things, then just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. You know, hell, I mean, maybe that would be a better arrangement. But anyways, the end of my rant. Yeah. Actually, you know, I'm going to do a video, I think, on personal finance that's going to be focused on a lot of these accounts, because that's what personal finance really is. It's really managing and navigating all this bullshit. That's a whole other thing. How much money goes into the personal finance racket? People selling those books and podcasts and all. Does that shit be counted towards GDP? Should any of Dave Ramsey's income really be counted towards GDP? When all he's basically doing is trying to help people navigate this just garbage morass? Probably not. So that's a whole other industry that's basically spawned up around this crap. And how many people are employed in that? How much money do we spend on that? And we send that off to the OECD and go, that's for real production. That's for real production. Our GDP is real high. It's a joke. Anyways, I'll leave you with that. So comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And I'm gonna do more videos this week.